Happy Halloween. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Tuesday Talks on this Halloween night. I want to first give a shout out to all of my grandchildren from Texas to Florida as they navigate the neighborhood successfully to fill their bags with candy and goodies dressed in all of their frightening and fun costumes. Because I know my grandsons in particular are out trick or treating. So I want to give a shout out to them, and I want to give a shout out to all of those of you who are either at an event, going to an event, or about to take your children to an event to trick or treat and get as much candy as their little bodies can hold. I particularly don't like the scary costumes. I'm more of a fun girl, but I wanted to give a shout out. And for those dog lovers and pet lovers, I had learned this year that they're even getting trick or treat outfits. So happy Halloween. Thank you for joining me tonight. I'm so glad that you decided to stop by and check in to see what's going on tonight. And I don't take that for granted. And my parents taught me to say thank you. So I appreciate it and I thank you. And I want to remind you, subscribe, follow me, hit me, give me a shout out, ask me questions, connect with me, because I want to make a connection. I don't want this to be one-sided. I want us to connect in ways that are meaningful to me and to you. So I'm ready to dive in. Tonight, the topic is what's on your mind. I've given you some things that have been on my mind and my heart and my story and the history behind the movement. But tonight I'm shifting gears. Tonight I'm asking the question, what's on your mind? What's on your minds? And I want you to hit me in the chat. I want you to send me some questions so that we can dialogue about things that you're thinking about. And I don't care what the subject matter is. I don't care how broad or how narrow, but I want you to share with me some questions that are on your mind that I might be able to answer. And I'm going to answer a few. And if I don't get to all of the questions, then I may pick it up next week, or I may intertwine it back in later on in the month of November. So I've got some questions that have already been shared with me on some of my social media platforms, and I'm just going to jump in and dive in and get this show on the road. So the first question that I want to talk about is a standard question that I hear often. And that question is, how does a working spouse and parent achieve and maintain work-life balance? How do you do it? How do you figure out the formula? Where do you draw the lines? And I want to start with the disclaimer that my favorite answer to most questions is one size does not fit all. And you've heard me say it already. One size does not fit all. So I'm not going to give an answer that will fit everybody that's listening, but I'm going to give you some points for all of the questions that you may be able to apply to you. So how do you achieve that work-life balance? How do you figure out where to draw the line, what the boundaries are? I'm going to give you just a few pointers. The first pointer is that, as they say on the airplane, when you're flying, put your mask on first. And that is the answer to the question. How do you do it? Put your mask on first. Because you're only as good to others as you are to yourself. And I can apply that to loving yourself, taking care of yourself, nurturing yourself, grooming yourself. I can apply that answer to so many areas of your life. So the first part of the answer is put your mask on first. Because if you die on the plane, you can't help anyone else around you. But when you are healthy, when you are nurtured, when you are rejuvenated, when you are strong, when you are emotionally and mentally stable, you have more to give. So the first part of the answer is take care of you first so you have more to give others. I don't care what your circumstances are. But there's a part two. Part two has to do with setting boundaries and then protecting those boundaries. If you decided that you're going to take care of yourself first, then you got to put some boundaries in place. because you can't put you at the bottom of the list and take care of you best. It's an oxymoron. You can't have it both ways. So you've got to decide, what are the boundaries around my self-care? What are the boundaries around me finding that balance between work and the rest of my life? And then protecting those boundaries, because if I set them but I don't protect them, I haven't gained anything. And then finally, you've got to be disciplined and you've got to be consistent, because hitting and missing isn't going to achieve what you're seeking to achieve in the long run. So if you set the boundaries and you protect them, but then you inconsistently apply them because you're not disciplined enough, you won't achieve what you're setting out to do. And if you are a spouse and or if you are in relationships and you have other people that are impacted, you've got to have those conversations. How do we achieve this without disrupting the entire balance of the community, of the home, of the network that I'm a part of? But those are the points to achieving work-life balance efficiently for your own good and the good of those around you. So that's the first question. Oh, I see some people jumping on. Let me see if there are any questions that have been asked. Okay. Okay, good. I love it. I love it. So question number 2. Ooh, all right, parents. This one's for you. And this one sort of piggybacks on last week a little bit. The question that I received was, how do parents effectively, remember, not wimpishly, not bullyishly, but effectively parent children, adolescents, and even young adults who are rebellious, oppositional, or defiant? Think about that. How do you parent? And the age range is broad, because you don't stop being a parent just because your child becomes an adult. You parent very differently, but you're still a parent. And that rebelliousness or defiance or oppositional behavior may continue. Now, I'm going to surprise you with my answer. And this is part of the training when I talk to parents about effectively, being those parents who really do make a positive impact and have a positive influence on their children. I start with a surprise strategy, and that is commitment. Because sometimes parents get it twisted. They think that the child or the adolescent or the young adult should bring commitment to the relationship at a higher level than we really can expect them to. And if you don't understand that, you have already set yourself up for disappointment, if not failure. Because if that child or adolescent or young adult is truly rebellious and defiant, they're not invested in your effective parenting. So you have to bring a level of commitment to the relationship, to the table, to the party at a higher level than they do. And what that level of commitment means to me is by any means necessary. And that could involve so many avenues to bring that commitment to improve the relationship, ultimately for the good of you and the child that you are trying to parent. But there's a second piece. And this is a piece that parents like to kind of overlook and minimize. And that piece is called credibility. You can't be a hypocrite and parent your children effectively, because they know behind the scenes, they know the closed door, they know the things that the people on the outside don't know about you. And if you're not a credible parent, and don't get it twisted, I don't mean perfect parent, but I mean credible parent. You can't be a hypocrite by what you expect of them, and you bring less to the table. And hear me, hear me, hear me. I'm not saying be perfect. I'm not saying don't make mistakes. I'm not saying don't have regrets about how you did this or that, but you can't be a hypocrite, because your credibility is what motivates your children and other children and teenagers and young adults in your life to listen to you. And some of that credibility involves being transparent and vulnerable about your life and what you have been through and what you did as a kid. And I told you last week, parents have to look in the mirror. I can't just get mad at you and forget what I did that frustrated and angered my own parents. But then there's a part three, collaboration. This is not a war, parents. We're not trying to fight with our children. We're trying to collaborate for a common goal that benefits both of us. And too often, our negative emotions control and dominate how we interact with our children. And that makes the collaboration difficult, if not flat out impossible. But at the end of the day, parents, our children and our adolescents and our young adult children make choices. And the consequences of their choices are on them. But if we parent them effectively because of the commitment we bring to the table, we minimize the likelihood that those consequences will be so severe and so long lasting that it will hurt them permanently. But at the end of the day, parents, we can't protect our children from some of the choices that they make, and we have to parent effectively to reduce the likelihood that they will make choices that will permanently or severely damage and hurt them. So that's the answer to question number 2. Let me see. Do I have any questions coming? Not yet. Okay, give me some questions in the chat room because I want to hear from you as well. Okay. Ooh, this one is dear to my heart. And I hear this a lot, and I hear it a lot in ways that people don't exactly say what they mean, but they're talking about this subject. So here's the question. How should I respectfully disagree with someone who questions or challenges my decision to seek mental health treatment or care? Hmm. Hmm. And as a therapist, I know there's a lot of different ways that people seek mental health treatment or care. It's not always in the office of a therapist. Sometimes it's actually in a treatment program, an in-house inpatient treatment program. Sometimes it's sitting in front of your deacon or your pastor and counseling with them about something that's happening in your life. So there are lots of ways to address mental health, and it doesn't always involve sitting in a therapist's office week by week. But here's the answer to the question, and I like the way they phrased it. How do I respectfully, because you don't want to turn it into World War III. You don't want it to become a knockdown, drag out fight, but you want to respectfully address their disagreement in a way that establishes your authority over your own life. It goes back to question number 1. I got to take care of me first. If I don't take care of me, I won't be the best version of me for myself and other people. So that's the first part of the answer. You got to do you. You got to do what's good for you. You got to do what you need to do. But secondly, but secondly, ain't nobody else your judge. I love to tell people that. I've got one judge and only one judge. And that judge is the Lord God Almighty. That's my judge. Anybody else, nobody else has the right to judge decisions that I make for my own well-being. And so I want to dispel the concern that anyone has a right to disagree with that decision when you're making the decision for yourself. Now, if you're asking them to pay for it, and if you want them to come out of their pocket and dole out some money, that's a different story. But if you're not doing that, their vote don't count. And I love to say it just like that. Their vote doesn't count. And you want to be comfortable within yourself that you have done your research, you have done your homework, and you have decided that this is a direction that you want to go in your life for your own well-being, because your mental health, your physical health, and your spiritual health overlap, and you cannot neglect one or the other and think that you will be whole and healthy and able to share with others in your life to the degree that you would want to, or to the degree that they would want you to. And mental health is a complicated phenomena, and it changes with time, and it's different for different people, and there are different kinds of mental health. And I like to say that mental health is on a continuum from high to low, good to bad, and everyone falls on that continuum someplace in some areas. And you have to be able to gauge, where are you and what do you need? And ain't nobody got the right to judge you but you. So let that digest. And that answer applies to a lot of questions about what other people think or what other people's opinion is. One of my cliches that I like to teach my clients in response to someone's opinion of them or something that they're doing is to simply say, that's one way to look at it, or that's one way to think about it, because it is. And people are entitled to their own opinion, but it doesn't mean their opinion should dictate what you do and how you decide it. So I'm looking in the chat. I don't see any questions yet. You have questions, and I want to give you some answers tonight. So hit me on the chat, raise a question that I can answer that might help someone else who's also listening. Okay. All right, I've got another question. It is, ooh, this is a good question. And you notice I'm not telling you who sent the questions in because that's their business, not yours. So this question is, and the person who's writing the question is also the person who this question may be about. Wink, wink. So the question is, why is it so much easier to focus on the shortcomings of others than it is to focus on your own shortcomings? Whoa, let that sink in. Why is it always, no, 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 nothing's always. Why is it often so much easier to focus on the shortcomings of others than to focus on our own shortcomings, especially if there's an overlap in the shortcomings? And man, now you're going to get me to go deep because I could talk about this the rest of the night. Because so often we're in the same boat. We have the same shortcomings. I just like to tell my couples, your boat is blue and your boat is pink, but you're really in the same boat so often. Yes, 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 opposites attract. But when it comes to our shortcomings, when it comes to our weaknesses, where it comes to those things we need to work on, so often we're working on different versions of the same, I'm going to call them shortcomings. And that is something that people, not just couples, parents and their children, employers and their employees, friends, co-workers, students and teachers, we in relationships, we often encounter that, and it's challenging to navigate. So here's the answer. The answer is because I rarely acknowledge the extent of my shortcomings. Instead, more often than not, I underestimate them. Let me say that again. Rarely do I acknowledge the extent of my shortcomings? And I always, nope, not always, I often underestimate the extent of my own weaknesses, shortcomings, faults, etc. I love to tell people, you will never, ever, ever on the planet know how much I really weigh. Never. Because I'm going to underestimate it. My driver's license, man, I don't even know what my weight is. My driver's license says whatever it says. And that's just a small thing. But we do that in life. That's human nature. Human nature is to underestimate. Ask the police officer, sir, ma'am, how many drinks did you have tonight? 1.5. Ha, how about 4? We underestimate negative attributes, negative behaviors all the time. How fast were you driving? 22 in a 30 mile zone. Try 55. We do it second nature. And we have to take responsibility for understanding that is human nature, but it's unhealthy. It impairs our relationships and it makes it difficult to authentically address those areas in ourselves that impact our relationships that we need to. But that's why we do it. It's just part of our human sinful nature. But when we are willing to get naked and be unashamed, then we can lay it all out and really have a conversation and begin to work on those areas of our lives that we need to work on. And when we do that, then not only will we be healthier, but our relationships will be healthier and we can begin to move in the direction that we really do want to go. So I'm looking in the chat. I'm looking in the chat. Ooh, question. When is it okay not to be okay? I love it. It's okay not to be okay whenever you're not okay. I love to say to people, I love to say to children and adults, you don't have to pretend you're okay when you're not. You do others no service and you do yourself even less. And here's when it really becomes a problem because all of that not okayness compounds, it builds up. And when it gets to the breaking point, that's what happens. You break. The pipes burst. The lid blows off. But it's okay to not be okay whenever you're not okay. Now, here's the caveat. Now, that doesn't mean you're not okay necessarily in the middle of the grocery store. That doesn't mean you're not okay necessarily in the middle of a presentation at work, but it means that you have to recognize you're not okay, recognize it, embrace it, and then give yourself permission to be not okay in a place and in a way that's safe. And you can pick and choose and decide what that looks like and when that should occur and how to go about doing it. But it's always okay not to be okay. And if we don't give ourselves that permission, we are creating a time bomb that's just tick, 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 ticking and waiting to explode. And I don't care who you are. I read a headline the other day about the number of surgeons. I don't know if there was, I think it was cardiac surgeons, I think, who were committing suicide at such a high rate. And I was taken aback, kinda, but then I thought about the pressure that they work under, and then I wasn't taken aback because they might find it hard not to be okay. And so many other professionals might find it hard not to be okay. But I'm here to tell you it's okay not to be okay whenever you're not okay. And that's my final answer. And I'm not going to qualify it. But then you pick and choose where, when, who, what, and how, and you do it in a way that is conducive to what you're doing and what you need. But I love the question, and that's my answer, final answer, period. So let's see if there's any more. Ooh, another question. Why is it hard to give constructive criticism? I love it. Two parts. Because constructive criticism can be constructive but not effective. And there's a huge difference because I may say to you what you need to hear, but I don't do it effectively. So that impairs the constructiveness of the feedback because of my delivery. And how I deliver constructive feedback matters, and it can be very effective or it can be very damaging. So the first part of the answer is because just because it's constructive doesn't mean it's effective. But then here's the second part, and this part is equally as important. So often our feedback is not constructive because we're more concerned about the response of the recipient than we are about the effectiveness of the feedback criticism. because I can't have it both ways. I can't control how you respond. I can't control how you receive it. I teach in my practice so often, and I use this as an example because it helps emphasize the difficulty of me controlling the response. In my practice, there are times when my sessions run a little long, and sometimes I can stop on the hour at the time that I agreed to, but sometimes I need a little more time. And I can walk into my waiting area and tell my next client, I'll be with you in a minute. I'm running a little late. And most of the times my clients say, Dr. V, I'm good. Do what you need to do, because they know if that were them, they would want me to give them the amount of time they needed to wrap up the session. But I could say the very same thing to another person in my waiting room, and they smack their lips and they look at their watch, and they may even say, we had an appointment scheduled. I need to be on the road at certain time. Same delivery, two different responses. I can't control that. But I can control whether my delivery is effective or not. And I'm considerate. I don't just leave them waiting and hanging. I intentionally walk out before the session is about to end so that I give them a heads up. But with all of that effective preparation, they still may not receive it well. So I like to emphasize the fact that I want to control the effectiveness of what I say. I don't want to be disrespectful. I don't want to be mean, but I don't want to be vague. And when I do that, then the response is in that other person's hand and I can't control it. But if I'm vague, I actually contribute to their frustration because they didn't know what I was really saying or what to expect. So great question. Thanks for sharing, Benet. I appreciate that. So, excuse me. So I don't want to go too long, but I want to welcome additional questions either later on in the chat as you come back and watch this a second time, or you can reach out to me at my website, surrenderorexplode.com, or on my social media platforms, Facebook group, Instagram, LinkedIn, even TikTok. You can reach out to me. But at the end of the day, I just wanted to hear what was on your mind and answer some of your questions so that you feel connected, and I'm actually addressing some of the concerns that are on your mind. So, before I wrap up, I want to give you a heads up about an event that's coming up. I am going to orchestrate another Super Sunday study of the book Surrender or Explode. And I'm going to be sharing details about what that will look like and when it's going to begin over the next several weeks. And I want those of you who are interested to follow me, express your interest, because I really want to give you a sense of how to make this happen. Because as I said to you, the book is not a novel. This Surrender or Explode book is a study for people. I started out by saying young people, but I quickly learned no, 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 this is a study for people, because not only are our young people exploding before they surrender, but there are quite a few adults, old people like me, who are exploding because they're not able and willing to understand how to surrender and play the game of life God's way. So I'm dropping a little hint out there that something's coming. It's going to be good. I'm going to have some virtual opportunities to connect with you, but follow me, stay tuned, and let's really move towards starting the new year out on the good foot, surrendering before we explode, no matter our ages. So thank you. Trick or treat. Enjoy your candy. Don't get a bellyache. And I'll see you next Tuesday. Thank you so very much. Take care.